Well, good morning, everybody. That was an interesting start. Oh,
Oh my God. Like, can anything go worse today? Like, ay, ay, ay. Like, I don't know if it's Restream that's having issues. I'm going to move and on this side. So I don't know if it's the software that we're using that's having issues or if it's the internet connections but my lease had issues, Edna had issues, I had issues. It's just like, wow. That's
don't
why
you
we're
love
like,
tech? Yeah, we're
yeah,
about 18
we hate
minutes late.
technology today.
Yep. Yeah, I've already had Katrina from Calgary saying, "Where are you guys? You're late."
We're here,
So
Katrina. It took a while, but like finally, it's like 18 minutes in, but we're here.
we're here. We've got
Yes,
Edna Sinclair with us today. Edna's the owner of the Real Muddy Toes Organics. And we had Edna on last week for some weed talk. So there was so much to talk about, and we got a lot of good feedback saying that there was lots of good information. So we're doing part two of We Talk today.
All
So,
right.
so actually, I know I was at a CD Saturday on Saturday, this past Saturday in Cornwall. Edna, you were at one as well, right?
I was. I was in Bankley Kill. It's a really small little community-based one, and there's a lady that runs a CSA that goes. There was a lady that was doing canning, and yeah, it was a nice little intimate setting.
Nice. They moved the Cornwall one from the Benson Center to the Civic Complex, and it was really well. There's a lot of people in that one, and it was nice that everybody was in one room. It was well attended, great event. I think I probably put about 40 pictures up or something.
Oh wow!
I took a lot of pictures. I tried to get everybody. It was nice.
I think
It
they
was
do a
nice.
lot of interactive stuff.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. They do, and it was a great show, but I can almost smell the soil when I walk into those places and the seeds, and I can just smell it. Anyway, last week we had, you talk about quite a few weeds that we can use and eat. Today, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. We're starting off with a couple of St. Patrick's Day related weeds. So, Julia, do you want to put up?
Yeah,
We've got the shamrock.
I'm gonna see if it collaborates, but yes, here we
yeah.
go.
We're hoping for the luck of the Irish. All right. So the picture that you're looking at there, on the left, it's a wood sorrel, and on the right is the shamrock. The
Oh,
shamrock and the wood sorrel are in the same family. The shamrock is identified by their leaves are more oval in shape, whereas the wood sorrel, their leaves are like pretty little hearts. The
Mhm.
shamrock is not as edible. Like they're all edible. It just doesn't have as much taste. Um, the wood sorrel is more common in our area, and it's in the same family. They have a tangy, lemony flavor. Some
hmm.
people say it's got a little bit of a garlic flavor. It's high in vitamin C and vitamin A, but like things like spinach and broccoli and that, they're high in oxalic acid, which for people who have gout and stuff like that, you should really eat sparingly. These things can be eaten raw in salads or lightly sauteed in oil like you would spinach. All the leaves and the flowers are edible. And this is another plant that has been used in beer making, especially over in Ireland. And it's also been used to make teas and sauces. So in the shamrock family, wood sorrel is one member of their family, but so is clovers. They're all in the same family. Most of them have either that citrus type flavor, but they are all high in oxalic acids.
Is this like the kind of like the common one that we see on our lawns all the time?
Yeah, like if you go to the next picture, you will
Yeah.
see.
Oh,
Um, so that's the wood sorrel.
Oh,
So you see that it
bear with
kind of
me. It's not changing. Okay.
like if you zoom in on the pictures, like because it doesn't get a lot of flowers. The flowers in this picture, to me, look a little bit bigger than what they should, but it's it does spread in the grass. But I think what you're talking about, the shamrock looks more similar to the clover, and the clover is what we see in our grass a lot. And depending
Okay.
whether or not it's the red or the white clover, um, determines like some of its properties and stuff. But they're all in the same family with similar constituents.
Can you eat the white and the red clover as well?
Yes, yeah, and they actually have a
Oh.
little bit of a sweet taste. I remember when I was little, we used to take like pluck the little sepals out of the flower, and you would suck on the end of them, and the end
Mm-hmm.
of them would always have a sweet, not quite honey taste, but when you're a little kid, you don't really know what those things are. But that's what we would say is that we were taking the nectar out of the plants, and that's what the bumblebees like. The clovers have more of a sweet, grassy taste, whereas the wood sorrel, which is the picture that we're seeing here, is more, that's wood sorrel as well.
Go to the clover.
So there's two pictures of the,
So,
The
yeah,
next one is clover. Come on, put the next picture
okay,
up.
let me
There you go.
just,
So you're
yeah,
talking
bear with me. It's slow.
I know. So basically you're sucking those little flowers have that sweet taste. Is that what
yeah, like
you're
you
talking
could
about?
kind of see the little, you could actually pull them out from the head.
Oh,
Those little,
Yeah, they're like carnations, no?
I'm trying to think what
They
other
look like
flower kind
carnations.
of looks like that. Because the little tubes are like kind of hollow. There's another
Mm-hmm.
oh,
plant that we used to do the same to. It's like red. It's like scarlet red, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's grown more as a flower. But clover is actually grown as a cover crop for a lot of farmers and stuff like that because it fixes nitrogen in your soil. So if you
oh,
have
Mm-hmm.
uh, disturbed soils or areas that have been over farmed, they'll grow like a cover crop of clover and then just rototill it right into the ground because it fixes back the nitrogen and stuff.
hmm.
And uh, I know I have some of my notes. My handwriting sometimes can be like, I'm just gonna, I know that there's the red clover. You could actually buy in health food stores and stuff. Um, and it's used in teas. Oh, of course, my computer's acting up now. Come on.
Anything
Everything is
electronic today
freezing.
is just
Yeah.
not happy. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why, but it's used in a lot of teas and stuff.
So how do so you're talking about like the red flower, you use that on teas.
Yes.
So what do?
Yeah.
You just put it in hot water?
Yeah. Like I forage them and I clean them and I dry them out,
Oh,
and they go into a tea. You can do them on their own, or here I'm just pulling it up now so it'll go. Like a lot of the companies, like traditional medicinals, which we see in a lot of stores like Loblaws and in their natural value section and stuff.
mhm.
It's a tea brand
Mm-hmm.
that's done, and the red clover specifically. The white clover, I believe, is grown more as a foraging crop for animals and stuff. But it's used a lot of times for menopause, arthritis, and but it can thin out the blood a little bit. So, like things like black seed oil and garlic and stuff, you should just use it in moderation. Um,
Mm-hmm. Should I go to the next pictures? You tell me when you want me to switch
yeah.
them,
So I'm just trying to see where
because
the
I'm
notes
not
were.
sure where I'm
So
at.
that's the picture of the clover, which again looks very much like the shamrock. So that's what a
Yeah.
lot of people will see all throughout their grass, and that's clover. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that one, because of the little white detailing, is the white clover. But
Mm-hmm.
like the clovers were used
So
to treat everything from osteoporosis, heart disease, respiratory problems, menstrual and menopause problems. Some people have even used it for
oh,
skin disorders and cancers. And that's like the red clover, and it's been used in mixes. Like for asthma, they might mix that in with a little bit of mullein, which we'll talk about later, and some honey and stuff like that. And then,
A lot of people are actually, and I've been doing this over the last few years, is I'm switching my grass to actual clover,
and that's what I've been doing
and it
too.
makes
Yeah.
it's so nice. Like, I mean, compared to grass, like when you walk on it, it is so soft, and I
Oh,
love it.
So the white clover,
But now I have
the white clover,
another thing I
yeah,
can do
sorry,
with it.
go ahead.
No, I'm just saying now there's one more thing I can do with it. I can make tea or
Yeah.
something.
Well, so the white clover, because you can also buy bulk of this seed too, like at your local feed stores. Because again, like I said,
Hmm.
okay.
because when you buy it for people to do it at their lawns, it's a much different price. Whereas when you buy it at the
Hmm.
big seed, the feed seed stores and stuff like that, um, it's sold to farmers like in bulk, like they buy it by the pounds, 5 or 10 or whatever pound bags. So I'm slowly
Hmm.
switching a lot of mine over too because as a ground cover, it's great because, like I said, it adds lots of things. It enriches your soils. So things that enrich your
Hmm.
soils, if you think about it, if it's doing that to the soil, then that means there's lots of good stuff in there. So what's it doing to our bodies? It enriches us as well. And
Oh, yep.
I had meant to at the beginning of this talk, uh, to basically say, well, a couple of things. Like a disclaimer is whenever you go to any of these talks, and even when I go to my naturopathic doctor, my herbalist friends and stuff, I never just take things. But even with my family doctor, I never just take a prescription unless I do a little bit of research myself, because nobody
Hmm.
knows you like you know you. So you might forget to tell your doctor some little thing or whatever, and then that medication she's prescribed is going to interact with something else that you're taking regularly or whatever. So I always say to people, all of this stuff is great information, but do a little bit of research on your own. And
Hmm.
one really like interesting tip, and I did bring this up a tiny bit, and I've said this ever since I was a little girl, which is really interesting, is like when people talk about acai berries and noni berries and all these crazes that came up where we were getting berries and juices and stuff from
Hmm.
Brazil and all these different faraway places, is I had always say to people, I believe that environmentally we're all very different, and especially here in Canada or North America, because our climate is ever changing day to day almost. And some days we can have winter, spring, summer, and fall on the same day. And like
Yep.
I've had people come here from, like warm cultures like Mexico or Costa Rica, and they're like, you guys have so much stuff, and it's like a lot of the stuff we have to have because of all the seasons. Like if you're an avid sports person, you might have ski equipment and toboggan equipment and then golf equipment and tennis equipment. And so you need a big closet for that. And then the same with all your clothing. But I always said that I believed in our environment we'll find all the superfoods that we need to cure what ails us. And so, a really neat quote that I found yesterday when I was reading and doing a bit of research was, in many native cultures around the world, the healer of the village would walk around the home of the sick to see what plants grew there before they would make the tonic for them. And they would make that tonic.
Hmm.
It's because it's like plant speak. It's like the plants seem to know what it is that you need. So I would always say to people, go. And it's interesting because again, here in Canada, we have vitamin D deficiencies. Just because we're more northern, we have a lot of vitamin B deficiencies, and a lot of the things that grows in our yards have vitamin C's and stuff like that, which we can constantly replenish. But I just find it really interesting. So it's a neat little thing that if people go, because some people might be like, oh my God, this weed, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't get rid of it. And I'll say to people, maybe you just should go research it. Maybe it's there because it's giving you a message. It's trying to tell you there's something you need.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's true.
We do have a question
Yeah.
from a viewer who asks, where in our area is best to find this? Public areas where I can go pick it.
the clover.
Okay, so clover really grows almost everywhere, and it grows, as do a lot of weeds. A lot of our weeds will grow in disturbed soil. So, abandoned lots. And what I would suggest is not close to a road because there's lots of pollution from roads and oil drips
Hmm.
and gas drips and that. Even if you find a friend or something that has, it's in a lot of meadows and open fields and stuff. Uh, you want to make sure that the field isn't sprayed with chemicals and stuff. And you wouldn't find this like in woodland area. It's more in open fields where
Mm-hmm.
you'll
Okay.
find it. But like I said, clover specifically, you can find the teas if you're not foraging, but you can find the teas fairly inexpensively in a lot of health food stores, excuse me, or grocery stores that have like a natural section. But like to forage them locally, I would say like a local meadow, or if you have a friend that has maybe a 1 acre or 2 acre lot, more than likely. And this comes out more in the summer. It's not the earliest of all the weeds. You'll find it like the leaves will come out, but the flowers really come out. Like I would say, like late June. I'm usually harvesting them should like throughout July and August. I'll go out and start
Okay.
just harvesting a little bit and drying them out, and I'll use them in some of my tea blends and stuff like that.
So the leaves themselves, Edna, you can just pick them and put them in a salad and eat them just like
Yeah,
that.
so the leaves are a little bit grassy tasting. So what I say with a lot of
Okay.
these foraged greens, because of their constitutions that they're doing things in our body, they don't necessarily taste like a lettuce. They have more of a taste
Okay.
profile like a spinach or something. A lot of them have bitter,
Okay.
bitter undertones. So I wouldn't say make a whole bowl of salad just using the leaves, but as an additive,
Okay.
you can use these things to your salads to add color and textures and
Okay.
vitamins.
Okay. And the flowers you can eat as well in your salad.
Yes, the flowers are actually more sought after in the clovers than the actual leaves themselves.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good to know.
So I'm gonna change the picture. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
this is
if we're
yeah,
still in clover.
this is
This
wild
is
violet.
violet.
Yeah. So wild violet is one of the first ones that pops up in the spring. And
Hmm.
like a lot of the famous herbalists from Rosemary Gladstar to Susan Weed. And it's Susan Weed. It's funny because one of my daughters, when I used to study her, she used to make these poems and sayings like as if she was the plant herself and she was talking. So, and it used to kind of drive my daughter bonkers a little bit because she's like, "Oh my God, that's so annoying." But she'd be like, like I am Viola, and you'll find me along paths, and this is what I'm good for, and that. But the so with the wild violet, the most sought after thing from them is their beautiful little flowers. They make a beautiful jelly. Um, and with the violets, I'm just going to my notes. They like more shady, moist soil. So that's why you see them in the early spring because the snow's coming off and all of our grounds are very damp. They grow very close to the base of a lot of trees. So you'll find them in forest settings, not so much open meadows unless there's a bit of a shade area to them. And they're spring and early summer. A lot of people will candy those flowers and then use them as cupcake toppers, or some people will even press them
Hmm.
into like a sugar cookie. They make a really beautiful liqueur. And as I had said before, jellies. Some people say that the flowers have a slight florally with a very mild berry type taste. The leaves are not as sought after because they're very mucilage, which means that they add a lot of gumminess. The more you chew them, they get very pasty and gummy in your mouth. And
Okay.
but the
Uh-huh.
leaves are the most medicinal part of the plant, and they are usually used to help with lymphatic drainage. They're very great in salves for inflamed skins because of the mucilage and the gumminess. So the leaves are less popular as food, but they can make a nice tea to basically help with your lymphatic drainage and stuff like that.
Okay,
So
we
again, so again, you would just put the leaves in water. Do you have to? You don't have to dry them or
No,
anything. Do you just put
no,
the
like you could
regular
dry them
leaves
if
in
you're
water?
storing them for long term, but any of the things you can
Okay.
use them fresh. It's
Okay.
usually when they're fresh, you don't have to use as much. And then once they're dried, just because obviously they shrivel up, you use a little bit more.
Okay. All right.
We do have an interesting
Yeah.
question about the clover from Jacqueline Milner. It is likely important that one plants clover that is native to Ontario. Yes? Question mark.
Um, I would like in the clover family, there's so much, but like because it goes into the wood sorrels and that. So I believe that all whites and red clovers are native to like the seed that you're gonna buy, like I said, at your feed store or at your local garden centers and stuff would be, I believe, what's native here. I've never got that question before, so it's a good question, and I just didn't think it was a plant that like it's something that grows naturally in our environment. So
Hmm.
I never researched whether or not it grows in other environments and stuff. It is one
Okay.
of the native ones that you see when you do go to these seed shows and stuff, when they're asking you to plant like wildflowers and stuff like that. So I don't think any of the seed that you would get wouldn't be like an invasive plant or something that you would plant and stuff. I don't know if that answers it.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
I'm I'm gonna research it now. I'm gonna move to the next picture.
Burdock.
Yeah. So burdock. So this.
And I'm
Yeah.
gonna turn my video off for a second. I'll be right back, guys.
Okay.
So this is
You can
burdock.
continue.
When I think of burdock, I think of dandelion and burdock because that makes a nice drink,
It
apparently.
does. Yes. So this is the very young. So first of all, burdock is a biennial plant. So in the plant world, there's lots of different things. There's our annuals, which are things that we have to plant or save the seed and plant every year. Every year it's a new plant.
Yep.
There are
Yep.
biennials, and biennials usually mean that in the first year they're going to put all their production into the root and the leaf part of the plant, and then they'll come back and they'll flower in the second year. And so
Okay.
for the burdock plant, especially if you're harvesting the roots, it's good to harvest it at the end of the first year because into the second year, that root is putting all the production into the stalk, which creates those little burrs that everybody dislikes. So the burdock, out of all of our plants
Oh.
around, is probably one of the most sought after medicinal ones because it's just a powerhouse. In a lot of Asian cultures, they actually dig up the roots and peel the roots and use it almost like a daikon radish. Or it does have a bitter taste to it. Even the leaves, when you get them very young, it's got a very medicinal, bitter taste to it. So it's not one that I enjoy raw. I always use this plant in a lot of my tea mixtures, and I don't use it in a salve or anything else. I use it, I harvest it for teas. Um, I have looked at recipes before for the burrs. Apparently, it can be made into quite a tasty wine, and it would be a wine like a digestive, um, kind of like a taste like Jägermeister. Like because Jägermeister is made with all the bitters plants, and it's a German tonic,
Hmm.
and it was originally made as a tonic as opposed to like a liqueur, and so it's got those same constituents that it would have those bitter undertones. So you would have to add honey, almost like a burdock mead or whatever. But burdock
Mhm.
really is a powerhouse. Um, it's like I said, it's you can use the leaves in the teas, harvest them when they're young, dry them out, and then at the end of the first season, uh, dig up those roots. The roots are tap roots, so even if the plant's only like 4 or 5 weeks old, you're still going to get a root that's probably 4 to 6 inches long. So you can harvest them earlier if you want, and they'll just be thinner and stuff. And if you're just cleaning them and chopping them up, and you want to chop that root up if you're going to use it before it dries out, because it is really, really hard. It gets very, very hard to um, to chop up after it's all dried out. But this is one I would say you would use more medicinally than as a food source. Although, like I said, it can be eaten as a food source as well.
Okay.
So the next one I have, it seems it didn't upload, so I'm not sure if we're missing one, but I'll put the next one I have here.
Yeah, so that's I put actually two pictures of that just to show a different angle because again, this looks in the picture, it looks like so that's yeah, so that's both the same plant. So that
Oh,
is called cleavers. And most people will
okay.
know that. And again, I don't know if this grows in most lawns because I have a farm and I have pastures and stuff. Um, this is something that it kind of grows along the ground, and its leaves and stuff have this thing that it almost sticks to your clothes when you're walking through. So if you've ever walked
Yeah,
through like a field and you come out and you have this piece of plant stuck to you,
yeah.
that's like the wild cleavers. And the cleavers, oh, I'm trying to see where all my notes are. Sorry. Cleavers is one that I know that a lot of herbalists work with and stuff like that. It's not one that I've worked with a lot, but it is. Of course, my all my notes are freezing up on my stuff too. It's like it's a freezing day.
Yeah.
All right, so the leaves are small and thin, and they're hairy, and it's those
Mhm.
hairs that stick
Yeah.
to you. The flowers are tiny white. And then the seeds, when it actually goes to seeds, are little tiny burrs that are like the size of a peppercorn. And they're really like a pain in the butt because they're more of a pain when they get into your dog's hair and stuff like that. They kind of cluster
Oh,
everything,
yeah.
and it's not like getting one burr out. It's because all the burrs stick to the burrs and stick to the hairs and stick to the burrs, and it's just. But they grow along roadsides, wasted ground, woodlands, and again, kind of like the violets in moist, shaded areas. They're an annual plant, but because of those little burrs, just like burdock, they drop their seeds and they come back, uh, like every year. Um, when you're harvesting them, you just pull them gently and they will detach from the roots. They can be used as a spinach substitute, as they, compared to a lot of
Oh,
the other ones, have a very mild flavor. Um, so again, you can chop this up and put it into salads. You want to do that before it goes to flour because then the energy goes into the flour. They have lots of vitamin C and vitamin A in them. The seeds, believe it or not, even though they would be really hard to harvest because they're small, but they can be roasted and they make a really nice coffee substitute.
hmm.
They were traditionally used to treat skin ailments and also act as a diuretic and help to cleanse the lymphatic system. So I would always say to people, forage in areas that are free from pollution and pesticides, and be mindful that you don't take the whole patch because if you do, especially before it goes to seed, then that patch is eliminated and it's not there, um, you know, for the next people that are coming
Future
along.
growth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Jackie's saying, what about the hairs that stick? Because they do. We've got that around here. Because I know you come out and you're full of these little
yeah.
burrs and bits, and
They're
yeah,
not
we
they're
have
not like
it.
stinging nettle or like you couldn't pick those off. So if you're like they're not like stinging nettle where they're gonna sting you or anything. So when you're chopping it up and you're putting it in your
Mhm.
salad, you wouldn't notice it. The little hairs and
Okay.
stuff like that. Whereas with stinging nettle, I find you do notice it. You do to get rid of that sting, you do have to cook it.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one doesn't sting
Okay.
you. It's just more of a nuisance.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I know. So the next one you got is heal
Yeah,
all.
it's
Heal
heal all.
all.
So it's a beautiful one. And a lot of people will
Yeah.
find this in their grass mid to late summer going into the fall. And it's a really pretty little flower. The flower head actually looks a tiny bit like Spanish lavender. Um, its also nickname is called self heal or wound wort. So in the wort families,
Hmm.
we have motherwort, mugwort, and woundwort, and they all have some similar properties, but they're all used medicinally for different ones. So it's highly nutritious and edible plant, and it's also a medicinal powerhouse. They've been used for centuries and have many beneficial purposes. It's easy to identify because of that little head. It grows low to the ground, almost like a creeping Charlie kind of vine that goes, but it's one standalone plant. It doesn't vine, but it's got that similar little round stem. It grows very low to the ground. A lot of time when you're cutting your grass, you'll miss it because it's that low to the ground.
So what do you eat on this one? You can eat the leaves and the
Yes, yep.
flowers?
And the flowers, you'll see a lot of herbalists. They'll just go along, and if you take your thumb and kind of put it at the base of where the flower head joins onto the stalk, and you just pop that head off, a lot of herbalists will dry this, the head of the flower, and then use it later on for tea. But you can also take scissors
Okay.
and chop it off. Um, but it's another one. It's got a very mild taste. And the good thing about this one that's great for beginner foragers is it doesn't really have any toxic lookalikes. Like a lot of our other plants, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you identify them properly. Um,
Mhm.
but this one is a perfect beginner one because it nothing else looks like it.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Next one.
Okay, so the next thing,
Pineapple
yeah, so
weed.
pineapple weed. So this is a cute little one,
Oh.
and you see this one actually in a lot of driveways. Like not
Yeah,
paved
we
driveways,
do.
but like dirt driveways. It just kind of pops
Yeah.
up. And I remember years ago when I didn't know the benefits of this because I thought it was just such a pain because it spreads and it's got these little roots but when you squeeze it, it actually does have a pineapple smell and it actually
Mm.
tastes a lot like chamomile. So you can use it.
Oh.
Um, and it's uh it's another one of those foraging ones that it's good to forage with kids in that because it's very safe and it grows in the most
Mhm.
uninviting of locations. So it grows even like I've seen this like in the cracks of asphalt coming up. So it'll grow just because of the way the roots grow. It pops up almost anywhere. They say that it even grows in the desert in California and stuff where there's nothing but dust or sand. So it's one of those little ones. Yet it's funny because the article that I looked at says I could even see it in the tiny cracks of the asphalts, in tennis courts and stuff like that. So I just feel like it's one of those plants that, it's telling you, like, I'm here and you need to use me. Um, it
Mm.
is a little bit bitter. So you want to get it when it's more young.
Mhm.
Um, and but like I said, it only grows about 3 to 4 inches tall. Um,
Uh,
uh, it's
And you can eat those
the
little
little flower heads. Yep. So the little
the flower heads and the other things too that look like a pineapple. Can you eat those too?
Yeah, so the little things that look like a
Like the
pineapple,
citrus.
that's before the flower opens up. So
Okay.
that's the
Okay. I thought it was once the flower was done.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Before.
some of them, like you can see them, some of them are when they're just opening, and some of them are so the
Yep.
bigger ones, like sorry, I'm pointing like in the top kind of middle of the screen, that one is the flower is done. And those are the parts
Yeah.
that taste a little bit like pineapple. It's got like a little
Okay.
it
Mhm.
to me it smells nicer than it tastes. Um,
Oh, I got a cat here.
but I'm trying to see where there's usually like a time of the year when you can um, harvest it where you're going to get more of the pleasant chamomile pineapple kind of taste as opposed to the bitterness notes that you're going to have. So the taste is supposed to be sweet, florally, pineapple-y with just a hint of bitterness. And what it is you want to take the flower head off right at the tip. You don't want to get part of the stems or the leaves because that's where the bitter notes are. And so that's what people
Okay.
do, kind of like the self heal, is they pop off the head, and that's the part.
Mhm.
It's like different parts of the plants. You can eat the head, or but the stem is more woody or whatever. But this one is a great one. Like it helps with digestion. It's got lots of vitamin C. Um, it's easy to forage. Um, it's like wild chamomile. It's got a slight sedative effect, which means it's one of those ones that you would use in a relaxing blend. So if you're stressed out a little bit
Okay.
or whatever, you definitely don't want to be drinking a tea or eating it, before
Certainly,
you're going out for a
certainly
run.
could have used that last night.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't
So
sleep
the
very well.
Oh,
okay. So the next one is
Awesome.
so what are we
mul
doing next? Oh,
Next
mullein.
one is
mullein.
Yeah, so mullein is one of my
We have
favorite
these.
herbs. Yeah, so so that's mullein is a biennial as well, like burdock. And the first year you get more like the little rosettes. It almost looks like a little rosette head. And again, that's probably when you want to harvest most of the leaves. Mullein is highly sought after by herbalists. It is so good for the lungs and respiratory.
Oh,
It helps people with COPD and asthma and lots of other great things. Um, I I use this herb a lot, so I harvest a lot of leaves. I even try to promote growing it like in rows, because I just use a lot of it, so I never get enough from foraging. Um, so as a biennial, you want to harvest those leaves in the first year, uh, right up to the end when it dies down. And you can also harvest it at the beginning of the second year. But once it starts putting the production into the big, huge stalk that's there, um, that's when the flowers become more beneficial. And those
okay.
flower heads, herbalists will pluck all the little flower heads because it kind of grows almost like how a cob of corn grows, where each little flower head comes out kind of like a kernel. So you could pick those off, and if you infuse them in, say, an olive oil, it makes a really good earache remedy.
Oh,
And then the stalks can be chopped up and used and powdered. But in the very centuries ago, before we had electricity and stuff, those stalks would be cut and then dipped into wax and used as torches in the night,
hmm,
because they get very woody and almost styrofoam like in the center. So they burn really, really, really well. But mullein is just a great lung. So I use it a lot in teas. It has a very grassy taste and it's very hairy. Um, so some people will say that for some people who are sensitive, it could be irritating. Like if you were to take it, some people call it poor man's toilet paper. I definitely wouldn't use it as toilet paper. Like if I was out in the wild, just because of all those little hairs. And those little hairs can be irritating to the skin for some people. So that's why I don't use it fresh as much. I'll use it. Hi, Mia. I'll use it dried out and in teas. I also
okay.
use the roots. I make a great tincture out of it. So for some people who don't like the taste of it, and it doesn't really have a taste, it has a grassy taste. It's not like really bitter like burdock. But I use it, I dry it, and then it crumbles almost into a powder, and I use it as a tea or I use the flowers. I know we're getting close on time, so
So
Uh,
it's not something that you would put in a salad and eat the leaves then
not
necessarily.
this one I wouldn't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
no.
No.
All right. Good to
But
know.
it's one
Okay.
that's really, really common in our area. That's why I talked about it,
Yeah, it
especially with
is.
a lot of people having colds and stuff like that. It makes a really nice tea,
Okay,
especially if you add
perfect.
cinnamon and stuff to it. Okay, so
Oh,
this is jewel weed. So jewel weed is another one of those ones that is more commonly used medicinally than it is as a foraged food. So
okay.
that's why when I had talked to you originally, is like a lot of the stuff that people forage, they forage it for different reasons. So some of it is a food source, and some of it, sorry, my leg is falling asleep. Some of it is for different benefits. Kids like this one because the seeds, how this one spreads is the seeds kind of puff up, and then if you brush against it or whatever, the seeds kind of pop and they
Is that
spit
the
out
one you can squeeze and it just like curls up?
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. plant.
Yeah, so that's jewelweed. So it's like it kind of spits its seeds at you. So
Yeah.
jewelweed, because of that, the juices that come out, if you're out in the wild and you know you got some skin abrasion or you got
Oh.
um, something happening, the juices can be used right away on the spot to rub on your abrasion and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Wow.
And it's oh, where are my notes here? But it's not one that I would necessarily eat because it is kind of very bitter in tasting and stuff like that. It's another one that grows in very moist, shady spots. So a lot of times you'll see them like if you have a barn, it might be growing on the either the eastern side of the barn or the northwest side of the barn,
Hmm.
and it usually forms dense little thickets. Um, and again, like a lot of these weeds, they grow in like disturbed areas and stuff, and it's because they're bringing stuff back. Um, but it's most commonly used. Um, it's also called a balsam weed. It's a part of the impatient family.
Okay.
Um, but it's most commonly used for the treatment of ivy. I can't talk.
Poison oak.
And that's what I'm saying. If you're out in the woods sometimes and you think
Oh,
you touched poison ivy or poison oak or whatever,
good to
Nice.
so they've
know.
used this, and I believe it's even used. The constituents of this plant are used pharmaceutically for some of those salves that treat poison ivy, but it's
Oh,
not
okay.
necessarily one that I would eat. It's not poisonous, but it's more used for salves and stuff.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay,
All
next
right.
one
Next
is
one.
so I always thought this one was called Queen Anne's lace, but
So,
is it?
so that's the one that you have to be careful of because Queen Anne's lace, yarrow, even hogweed, and what's the other one? Wild parsnip are very similar looking flower heads.
Oh,
Flower heads, but they have very different leaf. So yarrow has that very, I want to say it's not a great smelling flower. A lot of people grow this flower and more the prettier colors like the yellows and the bright oranges and stuff. They'll grow it and you can buy it at garden centers.
hmm.
They'll grow it for cut flowers because it lasts very long in a vase, but it definitely doesn't smell very nice and it definitely doesn't. Uh, to me, it has a very astringent taste, but it's another one that is highly sought after. Um, so you want to look at the leaf formations, like when
Okay.
you're picking the euro. It says that it's fairly easy to identify because the leaves are very fern and very lacy, and they spiral around the plant. So they don't grow all like in clusters. They kind of are staggered and they kind of go around.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, because poison parsnip kind of looks like that too, right?
it just grows a lot bigger. These guys only grow, and the
Yeah,
same with Queen Anne's lace. The Queen Anne's lace in my garden will
it grows
sometimes grow
bigger.
like in its wild, like 3 or 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
The leaves that come off this, if you look at them closely, they almost look a tiny bit like the individual branches of thyme.
Okay.
It can be considered an aggressive weed. I do grow a lot of it and stuff like that. It's got a slightly medicinal taste, and most people will find them bitter.
And what do you do with
Um,
it?
yeah, it's used mostly in a tea, and you
Okay.
want to add a little bit of honey or lemon. The leaves can be consumed raw or cooked as a pot herb or salad leaf, but
Okay.
it's mostly used to make salves, ointments, and other topically things that are used externally. Internally, you make teas and tinctures out of them. Um,
Correct me
and
if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if this is the same plant, but when I was a kid, we like I was in the scouts and stuff like that, and
yeah,
we had a survival um, um, class, and I believe they were telling us that this you can eat the root of. It's kind of like a carrot. Am I wrong?
uh, I think that's more the Queen Anne's lace.
Okay.
Yeah, this is more harvested more when it's young, like when it's young the leaves you would want to harvest when it's really young because it kind of grows up like the leaves grow up kind of like how some of the daisies and echinacea and stuff grow up. They grow up with clusters, and then the stem grows up, and then so you harvest the leaves when they're younger and stuff like that. But um, they can help to stop bleeding. So if you have a cut in the wild
Oh.
and you chew it up in your mouth, and then you put it on the wound, it helps to staunch bleeding.
Hmm.
It helps to relieve pain and fight infection. So you might have learned about it when you were out, like in Girl Guides and that, because it is one of the ones that they talk about that if you're out and you're far from help and you need help with the wound or whatever. Some people use it in digestive complaints. And it's also been used in tea blends to help with colds and flus. And then other things, it's been used in ointments and stuff to, like help with things like hemorrhoids and things like that because of what it does. It draws stuff and it staunches bleeding and stuff like that.
All right.
Um, yeah,
So the
but
last
it's
one I
best.
have
Yeah, yeah, it's
is this
Japanese
one.
knotweed. So that's
Oh,
Japanese knotweed, which is
we have
like,
it too.
yeah, it's an
We have it.
annoying plant and it kind of almost looks like it's in the bamboo family.
Yeah.
And so you want to get it when it's young. So this one is already flowered, and then it's going to drop all those seeds, and then but yeah, you want to get it when it's more young. I should have sent you more of the younger pictures. Um, but it's because it's so invasive and it's almost impossible to get rid of when you get it in your yard. People just don't like it. Um, but it says it gets a very bad rap, but it has a great source of flavor. Um, all plants. Oh, not all. Hold on, I'm just trying to make sure that I have this right. So, like rhubarb, it is one of those plants that is only edible at certain times of the year. The shoots are what you are looking for, but you have to get the shoots that pop out of the ground. So, this is like later in the season when it's flowered. You want to get the shoots, kind of like when you're looking for fiddleheads, which are part of the fern. You don't eat them after a certain time. You get them just when they're unfurling. So they say with the Japanese knotweed, you want to harvest it like in late April to early May, and you get those young shoots. And it says that it has a very similar sour taste to rhubarb.
Okay.
A lot of Asian cultures like to pickle them, or they use them in pies. They make preserves out of them, and they also make shrubs or cocktails.
Okay.
But yeah, you want to make sure that you get them when the shoots are just coming up out of the ground. Kind of like even like with asparagus, with asparagus, the longer you leave the asparagus in the ground, the woodier it gets,
Yeah.
and you can only use the top 2/3 of the plant or whatever. So as soon
Mhm.
as this one is popping up, you want to use it. You could steam it, you could saute it. Like I said, it makes a really, really delicious pickle because it's naturally sour.
But you wouldn't eat that in salads. I'm looking for stuff that you can eat in salads. That one you wouldn't, then it's sour.
No, I would say more of the salad ones were more of the ones that we used because I tried really hard to get the ones that are common in our area that people will recognize. Oh yeah, I saw that in my yard or whatever. Like, it's more the first group in week one that we did. Then
Okay.
those ones are more um the ones that because I tried to go around my yard or look at pictures and that to see which weeds just because I have a really big property and I have some woodland area, I have some meadow areas, and I tried to pick the ones that just grow naturally around here and some that grow naturally in different seasons and stuff like that.
Okay, so if you want to check out which the salady ones, watch last week's replay. There was a lot of good info.
Correct the mundo.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much again,
And
Edna.
Oh, you're welcome.
it wasn't so bad after all.
No,
I guess
no, we got
we
it
did
out.
okay, all things considered.
Yeah, these
All
all
right.
of these
Well,
ones that
I
we
don't want to keep you guys.
all of these
Go
ones,
ahead.
okay, all of these ones that we talked about today are like great ones. They're ones that, like I said, is for everybody. Just check out your information and stuff like that. They're not ones that, like, some of them are, like the burdock and the mullein are ones that I use a lot. But in the things that I do or the things that I eat naturally from my yard, the other ones aren't so much ones that I use. The clover and the violets, I'll make like a jelly and stuff. But so that's why I wasn't as smooth in knowing the knowledge of those, because I don't like giving out information if I'm not really sure on it. So that's why I was a little bit more hesitant today with some of those, because I know they are common and that local foragers will use those ones. But because I don't use them a lot, that's why I had to keep on going to my notes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks. So,
All right. Well,
All
I'm
right,
going to
everyone.
sign
Have a
off
have,
because everybody, we don't want to keep you on too
yeah.
long. We've gone over our normal time, but I hope you guys have a great day out there.
and have
Happy
yourself,
St. Patrick's
Happy
Day.
St. Patty's
yeah,
Day. Go
have
have a
yourself,
green beer.
and have
All
yourself a
right.
super duper week.
All right. Thank you. Take care,
Bye
ladies.
for
Thank you.
now. See you next week, guys.
Bye.